For those who don't know who Dark Energy Digital was, they were a British developer that primarily made snooker/pool games. Originally founded as Blade Interactive, in 2007 they announced Hydrophobia and showcased its dynamic water system, which was running on the Hydro engine. While the water effects and physics were impressive upon its reveal, it wouldn't be another 3 years before gamers got to play it for the Xbox 360 and eventually releasing for the PC and PlayStation 3, which is the version I'm using in this video. Unfortunately, the general reception was mixed to negative, with such outlets praising for its water-based gameplay, while others claim it became trite. As such, Dark Energy Digital attempted to address these faults, such as adding new levels, an overhauled camera system and general improvements to gameplay. Despite the developers' attempt of damage control, they don't overhaul the experience to make it worthwhile. Set in the mid-21st century, the world has suffered the rise of sea levels due to global warming, while those on the Queen of the World, a city-sized cruise ship, are able to prosper. However, the vessel becomes under siege by a terrorist group called the Malthusians, who believe the ship's population will outpace their agricultural production, and the solution to humanity's ordeal is by exterminating its occupants. As systems engineer Kate Wilson, she must confront them to stop their tyranny. On the surface, Hydrophobia Prophecy seems it has potential for telling an engrossing narrative. The fact global warming is a concern happening in the real world, and have terrorists with the inclination of enacting genocide for preventing overpopulation isn't so far-fetched. It also works with the protagonist who isn't a soldier, and as the game would progress she'll become less naive of her foes and comprehend the situation she's in. All of these could have established the foundation with gameplay built around them. Problem is, they're executed appallingly. The voice acting is atrocious, as Kate throughout my playthrough was always paranoid. I wouldn't mind if she initially started off that way, but as there's no character development, which also applies to the remaining characters, her paranoia becomes hackneyed to the point of being obnoxious. Moreover, it's further exacerbated when the game informs players where they need to go, as waypoints can be accessed by pressing left on the D-pad, thus diminishing any sense of panic since the ship you're on is flooding. Because the game takes place on a cruise vessel, players would surmise all parts of the ship is traversable, as well as encounter civilians along the way. Sadly, you'll move through the same corridors, vents, cargo bays and lift shafts multiple times, and the graphics look like they came from a PS2 game. Textures look muddy, character models don't move naturally, and facial animations don't match up with what's being said. Not to mention the music drowns out spoken dialogue, although why would you care since the story is never taken seriously, with an ending that is anticlimactic and provides no cessation. The controls are too sluggish for combat because you're unable to place accurate shots, leaving you pregnable for cheap damage. If you do get your crosshairs over your target, enemies are bullet sponges and have laser point accuracy. Even foes underwater have no issues, despite that water is refractive. Throughout the ship, Kate will gain access to different ammo types for her pistol. These are supposed to encourage resource management. In reality, you'll only use the default ammunition as you have an infinite supply, while the rest aren't practical due to the cumbersome controls. It also doesn't help that the cover system is poorly implemented, as there are times when Kate will vault over obstructions whereas they intended to use them. When Kate isn't shooting adversaries, she'll either be platforming to a destination or decrypt messages with a Mavi device. These segments aren't done too well, since platforming boils down to pointing the analog stick in the desired direction, and Kate's Mavi doesn't require skill for finding solutions. Later on, she also gains the ability to manipulate water, but its use is limited and comes into play before the final boss. Sure, there's a challenge mode for this, yet why should anyone care if the game doesn't function properly? Finally, to add insult to injury, Hydrophobia Prophecy keeps on displaying tutorials. Normally, a tutorial section would ease players into the game's mechanics, but here they're used throughout the entire game, making them more of an insult and less about teaching players. The only good thing I can give is the water effects are interesting for what it was running on and how it could have been used in combat, but that pales when you realise how nugatory it becomes to the experience. Hydrophobia Prophecy is one of those games where Dark Energy Digital attempted to dive into a different genre but didn't peruse it before commitment, or they simply didn't have the talent for this undertaking. Despite how DLC and updates add to the vanilla game, or could be used as a means to address shortcomings, the first impressions of any new brand are the most important. This version attempts to stay afloat, but it still ends up sinking.